Hi, this is Kim from Emerging Creatively Tutorials, and this is ECT TV episode 83. So right now, the trend in jewelry is lots of layers, so layered necklaces, tons of rings, and layered bracelets. So I'm wearing just several different bracelets, and today I'm going to show you how to make one bracelet, this particular one right here. And you can wear it by itself, or you can make lots of them and wear them all layered like this. So let's get started. So in this episode, I'm going to teach you how to string. So we're just going to make one strand, and I'm going to show you how to close crimp beads and how to use wire guards. If you don't have wire guards, I have other episodes, other videos, and other tutorials on how to string without the guardian. And I'm also going to show you how to make a bead dangle with wire. That part is optional. And I also want to show you a little bit about how to choose beading wire. So I'm going to get into that first. So the wire I use most often, which I like the best, is 49 strand. It is more expensive, but it's nice because it's real flexible and it gives a nice drape to your jewelry. And the 49 strands means that there are actually, in this one little wire, 49 strands that make up this wire. So like I said, it's very flexible, but it's also very sturdy and strong and won't break easily. There are other types of beading wire. So this has 49 strands, and you can see that right here. And then I have this one, and this is only 7 strands. So this wire only has 7 strands that make it up. It's less flexible and also less strong. My best advice is when you're making jewelry, use the best supplies that you can afford within your budget. So obviously the 49 is going to be better, but it is a significant price difference. There's also strands in between. I often use 19 strands if I'm making jewelry just for myself, but most often I use 49 strands, and that's what I have here. And I just have this one too. I got somewhere along the way. It also has 7 strands, but I just wanted to show you where you might find it. So that's the main thing you're looking for when you're looking for beading wire. So you will need beading wire for this project, and then you'll need beads, and you can use any beads you like. I am going to make a little tiny dainty bracelet, but you could use this same technique for any beads that you like. And you will also need crimping beads. So these are just little tiny beads that smush closed. I'll show you how. And they're just called crimp beads. They might be called crimps. And then I'm going to be showing you this technique using wire guards. And these are just like little horseshoe shaped pieces that you feed the wire through. It kind of makes it a little bit stronger. Or you attach the wire to your clasp is kind of the place where it is most likely to break, and this helps protect it. That's why it's called a wire guard. Guard your wire. And then for what I'm going to be showing you, this part is optional. You'll need 20 gauge half hard round wire, and that's to make the little bead dangle on the end here if you decide you want to do that. You'll also need a clasp, and I'm using a lobster clasp, and you'll need 2 jump rings. And I'm using 7mm jump rings. 4mm would be fine too. Whatever you have will work fine. And then the tools you'll need are a crimp tool. Some people call these crimping pliers. You'll need chain nose pliers and bent nose pliers, and they're to open jump rings. And you can use any pliers you like. You'll need 2 pair. They just can't be round or serrated with teeth, so just make sure they're flat on the inside. Bent nose pliers are great for opening jump rings though. You'll also need round nose pliers and wire cutters if you choose to do the optional bead dangle in the project. So to get started, we are going to cut a length of wire, and I like to just kind of go around my wrist and loosely measure, and then just add a few inches to each side, so a total of about 6 extra inches of wire, longer than what I want the bracelet to be. Okay, and so I am just making a simple bracelet with just one color of bead. So I don't really need to figure out a design or anything. If you're using several different beads, you might need to do that. And then I'm just going to tape one end of my wire so that the beads don't slide off. And then I am just simply going to start sliding beads onto my wire. And then the tape will just hold them on. Just keep adding beads until your bracelet is the length you'd like. And I just like to make mine a bead so that it fits me snugly around my wrist, and then when I add my clasp, it makes it a little bit loose. So that's how I like to do it. And so now we are going to crimp the end. So I like to use 2 crimp beads on each side. So a total of 4 for my bracelet. And not everybody likes to use that many, and that's fine. If you just want to use one, these are really light beads. I basically just do it because that's the way I was taught, and it does feel more secure to me. So I like to do a crimp bead, and then a bead, and then a crimp bead. So I'm going to actually take off my last bead and put a crimp bead on, and then I'll put that bead back on. If you're using small beads, that works perfectly. If you're using larger beads, you may want to find a small coordinating bead to use in between your 2 crimp beads. So I'm just sliding on a crimp bead, and now I'm sliding on the bead I just took off back on again, and then I'm just going to slide on another crimp bead. And you could use crimp covers if you like. I have other videos on that as well. I am not in this case going to. Mostly because I am out of them. But I think the crimp beads I'm using look fine without crimp covers as well. And crimp covers just are kind of like a clam-shaped bead, and you put them over the crimp bead and close it, and then it just looks like a little silver bead. So now I am using my wire guard, and so the wire guard is in this U shape, kind of like a horseshoe, and it has tubes on the ends, and then it's open at the top. So we're just going to slide up through one side, one of the tubes, and you just pull the wire right through, and then you pull the wire around the top and back down through the other tube. So you can kind of see here, and then we're going to pull that tight. And I have my other end taped to hold all the beads on while I do all this. So now I'm going to just pull up my crimp bead, and we're going to make sure it goes over this little tail end here too. And then my next bead. And then the crimp bead. And then we're going to leave this tail on, and it's going to go through a few more beads. But we're not going to worry about that right at this second. Right now we're going to close these crimp beads. So I'm going to use my crimp tool. The crimp tool has 2 notches. There's one that's closer to the handle that's a little bit bigger, and then there's one closer to the tip that's a little bit smaller. So first you put it in the larger one. You just line it up in that little notch, and you squeeze it closed. Oops. So that closes the crimp bead, and then you'll see a little kind of indentation, a little notch in the crimp bead. And so then you place the crimp bead back into the crimp tool, into the smaller notch, the one toward the tip, and you're going to line it up so that the ends are, the bead's going kind of up and down, and you just squeeze it closed, and so it kind of folds the crimp bead in half. So again, we'll do it with the other crimp bead. So in the larger notch first, and then you kind of turn it and close it with the smaller notch. And I know some of you have a difficult time with crimp beads and getting them closed and to stay closed. All I can say is keep practicing at it, and you can just pull, make sure you got it, and make sure it's secure. And using two is helpful too, because you have twice as much of a chance to make sure your bracelet is secure. Okay, so then we're just going to slide a few more beads over the end of that wire, this tail here. And you don't have to do a lot, just a few, and then we'll trim off the excess wire from that tail. Okay, and we just slide the beads down, and we're just going to repeat the same thing on the other side. So I just slid the tape off the end, and then I'm just going to take this last bead off and add my crimp beads. And one thing I wanted to say is, you don't want to make this, you want it to be somewhat tight, but you don't want to make it so tight that it's not flexible anymore. So leave a little bit of room. You don't really want the beads to move around, but you don't want it pulled so tight that it's not flexible anymore. So we're just going to repeat what we did on this side on the other side. And I just want to show you on this side, it is a little different because when we did the other side, we had more, we didn't have the other side done. So on this side, you kind of have to pull it through and kind of wiggle it down till it's nice and secure. Like I said, tight, but not super tight, so it's not flexible. And then we'll just do the crimp beads. And then I'm just using my wire cutters. I'm just going to trim off this tail as close as I can get to the bead. And do that on both sides. Okay. So the other nice thing about the wire guards is you can easily use jump rings with them. Jump rings are hard to use with beading wire because it slips through the little slot in the jump rings very easily, but when you use the wire guards, it doesn't. So that's another benefit to using wire guards. So now I'm going to show you how to make a bead dangle that you can add to this bracelet. You may not want to do this part, and that's fine. If that's the case, just hold on and I'll show you how to finish up the whole bracelet. But we want to make the bead dangle first so you can add it on if you do want to make it. Okay, so I'm going to just cut a small piece of wire, and it needs to be a few inches longer than your bead is. And then I'm going to just make sure I make a flush cut. So I'm using the back of my wire cutter, kind of the flat side back here, toward what I'm keeping. So this is a piece of wire I'm cutting, and I just cut that off. And that makes a flush cut, which is nice and flat. And next, I am going to just make a really simple kind of head pin. So I'm just using my chain nose pliers, and I'm going to make a bend at the very tip and kind of makes a little hook. And then you can just use your crimp tool. You can use your chain nose pliers too, but the crimp tool is easier to kind of push that down, bend it down. And then I'm just going to slide my bead on and push down to the end, and that little hook will hold it on. Now I'm using a very tiny bead. It's the same beads I used with my bracelet. You could use a different bead or any charm that you want, really. And I'm grabbing my round nose pliers, and I'm just going to use the very tip of my round nose pliers just in a little bit so that the loop is pretty small. And I'm just about 1/4 of an inch above the top of the bead. And I'm just going to bend around and make a loop. I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers. I'm going to hold that loop in my chain nose pliers, and the loop is off center and I want it to be centered, so I'm going to go around once and I'm going to pull my bead out straight so that loop is now centered on top of my bead. And you could switch hands if you want, and you can use your bent nose pliers to wrap around 2 more times. Just trim off the excess wire using our wire cutters and making a flush cut, and then come back with your chain nose pliers just to make sure that end is not sticking out. And that's a little tiny bead dangle to add to our bracelet. Okay, so now we have all the pieces for our bracelet and we can just put it together. So I have these 2 jump rings. I'll show you how to open them. First you find the little opening in the jump ring, and then you center 2 pair of pliers. So I'm using bent nose pliers because they work really well, and chain nose. And then you're going to pull 1 pair of pliers towards you and push 1 away. And you don't want to pull out. You want to kind of try to keep that circle. And I'm just going to do that again with my other jump ring. And so it's easier to open all of your jump rings that you need at one time. And so on one side, I'm going to place a jump ring right through that wire guard. And then I'm going to slide in my bead dangle. And then I'm going to close my jump ring. And you just close the jump ring doing the opposite of opening it. And I like to just go past the point of closure a few times. And you'll kind of hear it or feel it click into place. And then on the other side, I am going to add my lobster clasp. And close the jump ring. And so that's your bracelet. And so, like I mentioned, these are fun to make a whole bunch of and just layer up. You could use seed beads and make a whole bunch of different colors, and that would be really fun too. If you liked this project, you'll probably like some of my other workshops that I have over at my website. You can find them at kimberlykohler.com/shop, and I'll put the link below this video so you can go check them out. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.